is Cathy Laws, and I'm a software engineer, but I was a manager the last 8 years at IBM, all in what was called the Accessibility Center. So we developed standards and technologies for people with disabilities so they could both do their job and use the software within IBM, but also we educated companies all over the world on how to make their software more accessible. We worked with the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, so I was on those committees, helping to develop those technologies as well. But in the meantime, I was back in Florida, based in Boca Raton, Florida, and they were talking about moving us to Austin, Texas. Did not think my husband would come here. I did go to TCU. I graduated from Texas Christian in Fort Worth, so I didn't mind coming to Texas. But just in case, I went and got my master's in computing technology and education, and it was in the 90s, so I was going to start working on bringing computing technology into the schools. So when I retired 11 years ago, I actually went into education. That's how I became the director of Education Connection for Round Rock ISD, recruiting volunteers to read. But I also, in the meantime, was a substitute teacher for a few years, and I also taught an after-school enrichment class where we used Legos to build models. And I did that because back in IBM days, I volunteered as a mentor, and I would work with 7th grade girls, and we would run a camp in the summer at IBM using technology like Legos and building models and other kinds of engineering feats that are kind of fun with girls that are in 7th grade to keep them interested in math and science. So that's kind of my background, and we'll use some of those stories a little bit, and I'll talk a little more as we go along about some of my examples from my career, but also I may ask for you guys to contribute some of yours as well so that we can help others figure out how to do this thing called personal branding. But before we get started, I want first to play a little game with you and talk about why personal branding is important. So I'm going to say a phrase, and you guys just call out what it makes you think of, okay? So the first one is, don't leave home without it. American Express. That's actually where my husband worked. How about it's the real thing? Coca-Cola. How about just do it? Nike. Choosy mothers choose. Jif. The happiest place on earth, or maybe used to be? Disney World. Finger licking good. Okay, this one's a little harder. There are things money can't buy, but for everything else, there's MasterCard. Yep. Like a good neighbor, who's there? State Farm. So you kind of get the idea. These are little catchphrases that maybe, or maybe not, say one or two characteristics about the company or organization that they're a part of. Like another one might be, in God we trust. Where's that? Whose dollar? The United States. Like I said, it may or may not be something that people believe are true about that company or organization. But we're going to try to come up with something a little longer, more like a sentence that can be a statement that can summarize your resume or that can be a part of your LinkedIn profile. It's also a summary there. It can also be used when you're in a networking or interviewing situation, something you always say. It can also be the heart of your elevator pitch. So if you've taken any of those other courses or classes through job seekers, they're going to ask you to say, what is your personal brand statement? So usually this is where they direct people to start. Working on the resumes that gets results videos, and personal branding is one of those first steps that can help you. But why is it so important? Because back in the day when I worked at IBM, I never had to put a personal brand statement in my resume. It was all about what were my skills, my experience, all that kind of thing. But we're going to teach you that there's a lot more to it now, because for one thing, when I worked at IBM, I actually got a pension. So when I retired, they actually give me money, and I don't even have to go to work. But that's not true anymore. That ended in 2007, was when the pension ended. So people that came after me, It was more like other companies where they hire you, in the private sector anyway, to do a specific job. And if your skills are no longer relevant for the next project, then you had to either look internally and find another job, or eventually, starting in 1988, they had layoffs at IBM, just like any other company. So things became a lot more competitive, right? So people don't do the same job anymore like their parents used to. And so you have to distinguish yourself from the competition. A lot of us don't really feel comfortable trying to sell ourselves, and sell the things that we can do and who we are. It doesn't feel very humble, right? But if you don't do it, somebody else might, because a lot of times they ask you for, who are your references, and they call those people or write those people and say, what do you have to say about this person? And you may not necessarily agree with what they have to say. So you need to be able to say who you are, what kind of job you're looking for, why you're the best fit for a job, and why it's a good fit for you. So you need to focus on what's unique about your skills. So like my skills in IBM were very unique. There were only about 9 of us developers who really understood what it meant to make your software accessible, and we had to teach everybody else. So that, to be an accessibility consultant as a software engineer was a unique position. And so there might be something like that in what you do. It can be a lot of combinations. Everybody has different combinations. Even though you might work in the same department with somebody, they might have different degrees than you, different life experiences than you. They might have had other jobs before that one that you didn't have. So those combinations, like I was really big on hiring people to do user interface design, because that's what accessibility really is all about. And to do that, I had some people that had psychology degrees, so they understood human computer and technology interactions better than I did, or people that did technical writing to do the user's guides or even the specs within IBM. Some people needed to do project management to make sure we got everything done on time and figure out who had the best skills to do which task, things like that. So those combinations are what you need to bring out in your resume. What are your combinations of uniqueness? Your personality is another thing that's unique. Everybody likes to do different things and has different skills that go along with your personality. We have a lot of resources up on the Job Seekers Network website, and some of them, there's articles and classes and stuff. One of them we refer to is a management guru called Tom Peters, who says, all of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are the CEOs of our own companies, Me Incorporated. And Susan Whitcomb is someone that you'll find, we've used some of her resources in some of the courses we teach. She's the author of Christian Career Journey. She says branding is important because it brings you new opportunities faster. It makes others aware of your expertise and what they remember about you. It guides you in your career decisions about what training to pursue and opportunities to accept. It creates in an employer's mind a reason, a value proposition, why they should hire you, why you're the best fit for their job. And like I said earlier, it differentiates you from your competition, from other people's resumes that have been submitted, and it's something that's very memorable. And I've talked about where you use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take your handout and we're going to kind of walk through this handout. Some of it's more interactive than others, so we'll talk about that as well. So Becky, Terry, and Craig, and Kara, and a bunch of us started putting this class together quite a few years back now. And one of the things we did was come up with a little graphic formula to help you put that statement together. So there will be an intro phrase that we'll talk about in a little bit. But one of the first things we're going to do is look at what are your top 3 selling assets, kind of like those little catchphrases that we reviewed. We're going to brainstorm and ask you some questions to think about, what is it that I really have to offer? What are my skills, my expertise? That's kind of your brain. What are some tools that I know how to use to do my job? And then what are my passions? So a lot of times in IBM, I would hire someone who had a passion for helping people in general, but more specifically if they wanted to help people with disabilities, or maybe someone in their family had a disability, they went higher on my list than others because they wanted to do this job. And people would come in our organization and stay for a long time. I was there 25 years. That's like unheard of in IBM, to stay in one department for 25 years. So, that's not true of all of IBM. Most of you, had to move around to a new department all the time. But that's why it was unique. The next part of our statement will be, what value or benefit do you have to offer to an employer? So, and we want to see if you can quantify that, if you can. You can't always, but if you can quantify in terms of dollars or time or progress and efficiencies, like you increase or increase morale, productivity, whatever it might be, those things, we want to see if we can capture those. And we're going to talk about CAR statements when we talk about those kind of things. What are your accomplishments? Things that you've done to create and show that you're successful at what you do. And then your unique story, like mine is accessibility. So we'll put that all together using these keywords, and that will become your personal brand statement. And it will take you longer than this next hour to create it. So that will become homework, right? So look at section 2A, your personal brand brainstorming. So questions that we want to help you look at are, what makes you stand out from other candidates? How do you see others as unique? What distinctive talents, unique skills, specializations, expertise, maybe certifications, any of those kind of things that you have? Does anybody have some that, obviously I was in a technology world, but we have other ones like RNs, nurses. We have people in the world of education with PhDs or certified to be teachers. Anybody else have some that they have that can benefit you in sharing? Just call them out if you have any. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's going to come up. That'll come up more probably under what's your personality, your unique kind of soft skills that you can put together. It might fall more under that, as opposed to maybe like project management is another certification some people have, or any other kinds of things. Okay, Six Sigma. AWS? Okay. Yeah. So just trying to think of different things. Some other things might be, in this day and time, things exist to help people with becoming recognized with a certain level of expertise, with no degrees, no certifications, but just using things like social media. There's people that go and become very famous through some YouTube video or some podcast or blog that they've started. I don't know if anybody ever heard of the movie, it's a little old now, called Julie and Julia. Anybody hear of that movie? Okay, what did she do? Anybody want to share? She cooks through whose cookbook? Julia Child's French cuisine. So she, in her own right, wants to become, I don't know if she thinks out eventually, at first, I want to become an expert and everybody know it, but what does she do while she cooks through that cookbook of French cuisine? She blogs about it, right? So she becomes known in her own right because she documents it on a social media kind of place, right? And so some people become known that way. Others are, another big thing they do in IBM is like the patent king of the world or something. They have more patents every year than anybody else. And it's because inside of IBM, when I worked in research especially, it's part of your performance plan. It's part of who you are, and what they encourage you to do is to create a patent for everything that's a unique idea that you come up with. I even have some. And I wouldn't call myself an inventor, but I have 4 patents to my name. But it's not just all by myself. It's with a group of people. But there's everyday people that get patents about things. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joy Mangano, who worked for QVC and sells things through Bed Bath & Beyond when they were open, but they're still online. But anyway, her thing was she was a stay-at-home mom and a housewife, and she wanted to solve some everyday problems she had. And the first patent she came up with was called the Miracle Mop. But she came up with over 100 patents just to solve everyday problems. And she filed for those patents and sold those ideas and those products eventually through these networks like QVC and Bed Bath & Beyond. So you can become known that way. Other people, more traditional in IBM, was we would go to conferences and speak. We would go to, we would write we'd write articles and get them published in what was called the IBM Systems Journal and in other magazines like Byte and stuff. So some people became very well known by doing those kinds of things. And just like I said earlier with social media, you can still do that. You can create YouTube videos. You can create social media, blogs and podcasts and things about things that you know about and publish those. So that's another way to get certified without even going to a higher education and stuff like that. Anybody do anything like that or anything unique? Do you guys do that? Yeah. Anybody want to comment about that approach or any other things you can think of on how to get your expertise known out there? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or even mentoring. I mean, the way I'm still a mentor actually in Round Rock ISD. I have been for like 20 years. You can do things like that, but you can mentor in a more professional way as well. We actually have an organization in this church called, it's a workplace ministry where people in business, older men will mentor younger men, or older women will mentor younger women that are in the same kind of sector of business, but you can do that through other nonprofit organizations as well. Then there's other things that employers will pay a premium price for certain skills that you might have. Like I know in the world of education, you go to the front of the line if you can speak Spanish, because they want teachers, they want people that work at the school who can speak Spanish and even other languages now, to be able to communicate with their students that only know Spanish or some other language. And so I even have two friends who are in the world of technology, and they're both Chinese. They were born in China. The husband has worked for both Samsung and other corporations like that. Simply because he knows Chinese, they've sent him to China to open new offices over there. His wife has worked for Bazaar Voice, translating Chinese postings to make sure they're okay before they're published. And she's worked many, many years there. So some people get jobs like that because of something that they know that's unique. So you can be thinking about, anybody else have some unique skill that combined with the kind of job you're looking for that might stand out on your resume? Maybe have another example? No? Maybe you'll think of something as we go along. But some of those are. And then just the last question is, what is my vision, mission, purpose, or calling, and how do I communicate it in my brand? So we have a class that's offered through what's called Saturate Austin here at Hill Country. It's called Living the Called Life. It's really a job seekers class that started here and was offered as part of job seekers for many, many years. And now it's been incorporated in that venue. So it's on Wednesday nights. I think they've already started for this semester, but there'll be another one offered in the fall. It's very inexpensive to take. I don't know exactly, like $30, $40 or something like that. But it helps you to figure out, by looking at things like as well as design and focus is a little bit like this, but doesn't have as much of a life purpose or spiritual focus. But they look at things like, what is your personality? And like they'll come up with, if it's Myers-Briggs, it's like I'm ESFJ or something like that. And then you learn what all of the descriptive words are for your personality. So that really helps you as you're wording things in your resume to come up with words that really describe who you are and how you're different. They also come up with things like, what is your value system? What are things that you really like to do, including your hobbies? How can you take all that combination of things and figure out just how you're wired to find that best fitting job? Okay? So all these kinds of questions are helping you come up with keywords and phrases that describe what are your top 3 selling assets. Keywords become very important when you're creating your resume and when you're creating your personal brand statement. Okay? If you look on the next page, at the top of page 2, you'll see that there's this table. So I was just talking about keywords. And the keywords you want to include both in that first section of your resume. So how many of you have been out to the website, jsnatx.org, and seen the resumes that gets results videos yet? How many have been there? Okay, this is a key resource that you need to go check out. And if it's on one of the pull downs and it says resumes that gets results, you go in there and there's 6 different videos. They're done by Cara Bell. And there's also some templates that you can download to get started on your resume. And these videos will help you fill in the different sections. The one that most relates to personal branding, at least it used to be called the job title and branding video. And there's the sample resume that we'll talk about how to incorporate this personal brand statement. However, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing where you have to work on your resume a while before you can create a personal brand statement, because you're still trying to come up with those keywords that you can use in that personal brand statement. But tables like this will help you get started with that. So like, for example, technical skills and competencies, you'll come up with descriptive words for your skill sets, like education, project management, technical writing, programming, social media, teaching, training, whatever it might be, mechanical or civil engineering. For lots of programmers have lots of different kinds of more specific skills. And so you need to look at the job postings that are looking the most interesting to you, that are the best fitting for you, that you believe, and look at some of those keywords. But for example, I would put on mine high-level programming skills. In parentheses, I would say like C++ and Java, because those are the 2 I know. But if I were applying for a job that required Python, I would put that in there, but I would include Python. I don't have Python, but I would say like that. I don't know Python, but I know C++ and Java. So it would pick up that keyword. So hopefully you can look at some of these words and see how you would describe your technical skills and competencies. And then you would look at what are considered more motivating skills or transferable skills. And these are really strong verbs, action verbs, like analyze, collaborate, counsel, develop, mentor, organize, schedule. Okay, that's some of those. And then personal attributes come from those personality descriptions, like somebody was saying they're a creative problem solver, so that might fall under personal attributes. Sometimes they might, and the best way to get some of these keywords is to look at those job postings, circle all the words in the job posting that are true about you. See how you can incorporate some of those back into your resume. But don't put things like assertive risk taker. If that's in the job posting and that's not you, don't put that in your resume. And actually reconsider, would I really like this job? If I can't put those words in my resume, is this really the job for me? So you need to kind of do this trade-off and look at that. Same thing for impact qualifiers. Are you certified, an expert, recognized, or specialized in something? Do you just do things very quickly? Are you passionate about something? You can include some of those words as well. Okay, any questions on the first section on doing some brainstorming to get those top 3 selling assets and the keywords? Do you have a question? Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right, right. It's a very helpful exercise. And there are some sessions where we talk about, there's some software you can use that help you look at those matches too between your resume, your current resume and the job posting, but then also go back to that job posting and circle all of them, see the ones you're missing. Yes? Okay, so you're going through exercises and trying to come up with some on your own, but you always want to validate it against those job postings that look like they are the most relevant to the job you want, but also the ones that you're a best fit for. So they can help you both ways. They can help you realize the job posting is great for you or not great for you. It's kind of in parallel. Yeah. Because when you write your resume or help really enhance, probably, because everybody probably has one, but you want to enhance it looking for these things that maybe you didn't think about before. It's a little different perspective than how you thought you should write a resume, right? Okay, some other things that you may have in your back pocket you didn't know is a lot of times, I mean, every year at IBM, they would ask us at the beginning of the fiscal year to come up as individuals and teams under each organization. What are your goals and objectives for this year, right? And to do that, they would have us write, a document of goals and objectives. And then as we went along, especially when I was a manager, I would encourage all of my employees to each month kind of go back and look at that and write down, what did you accomplish towards reaching those goals and objectives this month? Because if you wait till the end, whether it's December or August when you have to come up with, your performance, or actually ours was more in October, kind of an odd way they did it. But anyway, when you had to come up with that, you might have forgotten what you did 9 or 10 months ago, right? So kind of keep up with it. And then at the end of the year, you would write your own performance review that with your manager, and then it would get rolled up the line. And so those are performance reviews and goals and objectives that I actually kept. I still have mine. Don't know why. I should throw them away now because there's 35 years of those and I'm not going back. But if you guys have them, they're a great resource for you to help to come up with what we're going to talk about next, which are CAR statements, success and accomplishment kind of statements. CAR stands for challenges, actions, and results, okay? We're going to talk about that in a minute. But besides that, you might also have, letters of recommendation or commendation from people that were written to you and awards that you got, even if it was just like we used to have employee of the month, or we would be able to do peer recognitions a lot of times in the past. I don't know if they still do that, but those kind of things can help also to bring up if they relate to the kind of job that you're trying to get. So old documents. Or if you don't have those, you might still be in touch with people that you used to work with, people that were your peers or maybe even your supervisor or manager, and you can have, email them or text them or meet them for coffee or talk to them on the phone and say, remember that project we used to work on? Can you kind of help me come up with some of the numbers, some of the achievements that we had? how many clients did we serve, or did we sell to, that kind of thing. What were the kind of dollars? Hmm. Right, incorporate, yeah, some of those keywords from those of what, and then reference. You don't have to, you can also, as part of your resume, you're going to put in your URL for your LinkedIn profile. So there's already going to be that link over there, and they're going to Google you anyway and see, what's going on out in the world with you. If you're out there, if you're on Facebook, even though you don't mention it on your resume, they're going to find you. So be careful what those messages are, but incorporate the ones that show your strengths and your accomplishments as you go along. So if you turn on page 3, we're going to have some similar kind of memory probe kind of questions, brainstorming questions to help us come up with our car statements. So when you write your resume, usually you write it in a timeline going backwards, right? So you write down your last position that you had at your last company, and you keep going back up to 15 years. However, if you haven't worked for a while because you were a stay-at-home mom, or you had to take care of somebody who was sick, or you went back and got a degree, you need to address that in your resume, and those videos will tell you how to do that in the template. But you also need to, so you may do more of a functional resume in that case, and we do talk about that. But Kara also has some ideas. It is better if you can do a timeline resume, but if you've been out of the workplace, a functional one might be more relevant. These are the different kinds of positions I had, and what kind of skills you had. But you also might bring up some things that you did when you were out of work, maybe as a volunteer. Like if you ever, and that's true even if you have been working. Like the way I got a job working at this little company doing after school was saying, oh yeah, I've worked at a technology camp with Legos at IBM for girls. So they knew I could work with kids in that environment, even though I didn't have my master's certified in teaching or anything. So you can bring up some of those, some of the hobbies you have. Like right now, as the director of Education Connection, I do lots and lots of project management, and I do presentations, and I put on big galas like we're having this Thursday. So I have lots of skills that are still relevant to the kinds of jobs that I had at IBM, and I use my IBM skills all the time. So you can put those kind of things in. But let's look through some of these memory probe questions to see for each position that you've had how you can come up with success and achievement kinds of bulleted items, 3 or 4 of them, for each position. So things like, did you increase sales and market share, profitability, efficiency? Did you decrease costs for the company? Did you ever save money, time, or resources for the company? Did you complete a major project under budget and on time? A lot of times when I was the technical lead of a development team, I would have to estimate, this is how many people I'm going to need, this is how long it's going to take, here's my project plan, all the tasks we have to do, and I'd have to come up with that. And at the end, in the end, it was always, it seemed like, about the time. Like you had to complete it on time. Whatever you did, it had to be on time. So the way I would often achieve that, if I was getting close to the end, is I would have my customers prioritize all of the features and functionality and say, what is the most important to you? What is the least important? And I would get rid of the least important functionality that took the most time so I could achieve it on time. So things like that you can describe as part of your achievements, even though there's no numbers, but you can say you completed your project plan on time, right? So things like that sometimes, or under budget, you didn't overspend either. Did you receive any kind of awards or special recognition, kind of like we talked about in the assets? Were you a recognized expert in your field, and what did you do to achieve that? Have you ever been published? And you can talk about that. But it is real important, and there's been several articles in some financial magazines that talk about numbers, why numbers are important, if you can put them in to quantify these accomplishments. So things like under finances, budgets managed, costs saved, revenue generated, locations. So another big thing that we often did, and I did this, I had to work across the ocean because all of our products were translated. So I had to work with each country to get the products, all the user interface and everything translated, all the documents that went with it. So you can talk about that, and some of them were my developers as well. I had developers working in Japan and Brazil. So all those things can add and show your level of success, the breadth of your knowledge and expertise and your management skills. Time, project duration, time-saving initiatives, task completion. How did you accomplish some of that? How many people worked on your team? How many employees, how many contractors, how many other organizations did you have to work with those people? Or how many customers did you have? And how big was your team? And then you can use percentages of your target, percentages of services provided, or percentage of costs saved. Those are just some of the main key numbers that you could include in some of those CAR statements. Does anybody have any questions about CAR statements? I have a few more things to say, but any questions so far? Does it make sense? Does it sound hard? It can be challenging at times to come up with those best CAR statements. So if you turn to the next page, we have another table that helps you with those keywords. So the way that a CAR statement is structured, even though we call it a CAR statement, we say C first because we want you to think of the challenges that you've had, right? But when you actually write CAR statements down, you're going to write them as RAC statements, R-A-C. You're going to write the results first. And all the results are going to start with an action verb, the strongest action verb you can have, like you achieved, or analyzed, or championed, or consulted, coordinated, or maybe you organized, produced, simplified, streamlined, mentored, increased, negotiated contracts, and negotiated the deals. You tracked things. So you're going to write your result in bold, whatever it was, achieved X, Y, Z, and then you're going to say by, and then state your actions, the actions you took to achieve those kind of results. You probably won't state your challenge very often because by the time you say the results and the action, it kind of becomes obvious what your challenge was. So you don't need to waste words on that unless it's not clear. But for the most part, you don't have to do that. Another thing you'll see in the resumes that gets results videos is they'll talk about these CAR statements and how if you want to call out your top 3 CAR statements, you can create a section that's close to the top of your resume called Select Accomplishments. So in your resume, you have these, your name, your LinkedIn URL, and your email. And then you'll have your summary section that lists those skills. It'll have your personal branding statement in there that's a summary and your skill sets. But then the next section, so it's in the top half of your first page, would be Select Accomplishments. Bring those top 3 up and say, I accomplished XYZ by doing ABC. And then state a little tale that says what position you had when you did that, so that you don't have to repeat it down below. Okay? Did you have a question? Okay. And so you might do this because even though the HR is probably scanning your resume and weeding out those who don't have all the requirements, somebody that's manually looking through the resumes, they're looking really quick. If they have a lot, they're just looking through the top half and really catching on, is this person going to even be relevant to what I'm looking for? And they're pulling those out first, right? Okay, so that's why we encourage you to do that, especially if you're not having success, to pull out those top 3. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right, because they're looking for those keywords too. That's why I said, yeah, you have to somehow incorporate them. Just incorporate them so the match shows up, but you need to put the right wording around them to clarify. Yeah. Okay, so then at the bottom of this page, we show you, we have a little worksheet and we show you some examples of CAR statements. And you'll see that we always try to put in a number, like achieved 105% of revenue, and then even the action statement by whatever is using action verbs to say what you did, by analyzing the competition and implementing key marketing strategies. If it's an award, you could change it up a little and not start with a verb, although I think grammatically you should start all your bulleted items in the same way, but you could just say you were the recipient of an award that you got by still doing whatever you did to get it. The last bullet's showing where you might not have numbers, but this is an HR statement like maximized employee retention by ensuring high employee morale, by initiating and implementing a new bonus incentive plan. So whatever you do, make this statement look like a success statement by using those really strong action verbs. Don't say I did this or made this. Those aren't going to get you anywhere. They're too passive, right? Okay. So then on page 5, we have a worksheet. So once you've done your homework for a while on creating your resume and your personal brand statement, actually working on your resume and these questions, then you're going to take those keywords from each section. You'll start with an intro phrase that is really what is the job you're trying for, like as I would say, for me, I would say as an accessibility consultant, but right now, since I'm a retired volunteer, I would say, as a volunteer or whatever. Or you could talk about what you're passionate about. You can talk about your unique background. Start it off that way, just a little phrase. And then, like I said, those select accomplishments that you put in that top section, they'll go under the top 3 CAR statements section, and then the top 3 selling assets that you came up with from that brainstorming exercise, you're going to put those there, but then you're going to have to summarize those. So you're basically pulling out those keywords to put all together in a sentence, right? And then you also want to pull out, like my unique keyword would be accessibility. You might have a different one that's unique that will kind of summarize your uniqueness that you'll pull out. And if you turn on the last page, we actually have some effective branding statements. And I want you to look at the 4th one. So I wrote the 4th one as a typical software engineer at the time when I was back in IBM. And I would have said, if I worked in software group, I have a unique background in designing and developing leading-edge technologies to address third-world economic problems and quality of life in emerging markets. That's what our software engineers basically did. They actually would create infrastructure for places like Africa, so that they could all have technology in these very remote places. That was part of what we did. Watson had just started when I was still working at IBM, so there was some AI getting started. But it was always leading edge because it always came from research. And everybody in research was always trying to come up with the latest thing. But what I did, so to change that statement up to really describe my unique personal brand statement, I would have said this. I have a unique background in designing and developing leading-edge accessibility technologies and standards to address the employability and quality of life for people with disabilities. So see, I took that same basic software engineer personal brand statement and changed it up in my unique way, okay? And actually, I took Living the Called Life when I started working at Job Seekers 11 years ago to figure out what am I going to do in my second half, because I actually retired pretty early. Even though I had 35 years, I was still only in my 50s, so I had retired pretty early. And I came up with this as my personal brand statement or my life purpose statement. As a community impact volunteer and instructor, I mentor, coach, and educate others, especially the next generation, regarding career and life objectives, financial management, reading and technology literacy, and faith in God. So everything that I agree to do these days, whether it's take a job, a little job, or volunteer, I look at this statement and say, does this fit my personal brand statement, my life purpose statement? Kind of rolled them into one. And if it doesn't, then I say, no, I'm not doing that. So it's kind of like a filter for you as well as you look at job postings. Your personal brand statement can actually become a statement that helps you qualify if that job posting is the best fit for you or not. Is it really something that you're looking to do, that you're called to do, that you're, all your skill sets, your passions, your personality, your experiences, does it match those? There may be a time where you have to take a job that doesn't meet all those because you need to make the money and it's been too long, right? But your eventual dream job is going to match that personal brand statement as closely as you can, right? So there's a lot of homework from this session. Anybody have any questions about what to do next or how you can use this session and what you've gotten out of it to go to the next step in your job search? So say you have a bunch of car statements, 35 years worth, let's say. Well, you should only have like 15 years worth most likely. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, even in my own career, if I really dug deep, I had more than one, even though I had the title of software engineer, that has a lot of different things I can do, because I could be the test team lead, I could be a project manager, I can be a people manager, I can be a heads down programmer and coder, I can be a user interface designer, but all those jobs are uniquely different, so I might have this master resume that's a lot more than 2 pages, maybe 4 pages, and I pull from that depending on what I'm applying for more specifically. So yeah, you will have a bigger resume probably, especially if you have a very deep and rich history. If you're younger and it's not as long, then it's not usually quite as hard. But yeah, as we get into, we've worked more than 25 or 30 years, we could have a pretty rich list. So you're going to have to be more selective. And you want it to match more closely to the job posting that you're looking at. Any other questions? What? Did I miss somebody? Oh. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. The coaches here will help answer any questions you have, or feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you think that any coach or if I can help you in any way. I still do know people that work at IBM. One thing I could tell you is, and I've told people this when I talk to them in the beginning, is that if you're looking at a job in a big company, like at IBM, they don't post who the hiring manager is for the job posting. So networking can really help using through LinkedIn or whatever, or maybe you already know somebody that works at that big company. On the inside, they do post who the hiring manager is. So they might be able to help you get a little bit more information about that department, about that manager, or even get if you knew their name at IBM, you can find on the IBM website everybody's email address, but you have to know who you're looking for. So you can't just like randomly look through a directory. That could help, like if you wanted to write an email of introduction. I did hire somebody that used to work at IBM for me, and then she took like a 9-year leave of absence. And then I kept pursuing her each year going, you have these unique skills. If you ever want to come back, let me know. I hired her first as a contractor. She proved herself again. And then I got to hire her as an employee. So sometimes there's another route to go, and networking can definitely help you to get where you want to go when it seems like all the doors are closed and everybody's just ignoring your resume kind of thing. So that's one little tip. Okay, thank you guys so much.